Noswaith dda, Jenny Rathbone dwi. Very pleased to welcome you to this event, which is all part of the way in which we're celebrating International Women's Day, which is tomorrow. My name's Jenny Rathbone. I chair the Equality and Social Justice Committee, which recently published a report on childcare, which is called Minding the Future, and closing the childcare barrier facing working parents. So this is obviously one of the most important issues facing women, because we are still seeing that women are assumed to be the main carers of children, and that is reflected in the way that employers think about employing women, and most importantly, what they pay or don't pay women. So we feel as Senedd members that this is one of the most important issues that we have to crack in this 6th Welsh Parliament. So I'm very pleased to welcome Gwenllian Lansdowne-Davies, Senedd Williams, member of the committee. Jackie, your surname isn't appearing on my screen, but you're extremely welcome, and Laura Maguire. So shall we just go in the order in which you're appearing on my screen? And if you'd like to introduce yourselves and say, you know, why you think this issue is important, and what your experience of is it today. Should we start with our 3 guests, and then I'll come to Senedd last, so that she can pick up any issues. So Gwenllian Lansdowne-Davies, would you like to introduce yourself?
Noswaith dda pawb, Gwenllian dwi'n gweithio fel prif weithredwr I Mudiad Meithrin ac yn gadeirydd ar bartneriaeth cwlwm sydd yn cynrychioli holl ddarparwyr gofal plant a chwarae Cymru, ac yn ddiolchgar am y cyfle I fod yma heno. Wrth fyfyrio rywfaint ar yr her sydd yn hwynebu ni o ran annog a chymell unigolion a mamau yn enwedig yn ôl i'r gweithle. Dwi'n meddwl am hynny o safbwynt mam, ond dwi hefyd yn meddwl am hynny o'r safbwynt darparwyr gofal plant, y cylchoedd meithrin, y meithrin feidd dydd, y grwpiau chwarae ac ati. A dwi'n meddwl efallai mae'r cwestiwn gwaelodol neu sylfaenol sydd wrth wraidd yr her yma ydy pwy sydd yn gofalu, beth ydy'r syniadau ystrydebol yna sydd gynnon ni fel cymdeithas ynglyn â pwy ddyla fod yn gofalu am yn plant ni. Ac wrth gwrs mae yna lawer o ddatblygiadau adeiladol iawn wedi bod dros y degawdau, ond dwi'n meddwl bod ni'n mynd yn ôl at y canfyddiad gwaelodol hwnnw mae lle y fam ydy gofalu, a mae hynny wedyn ag oblygiadau i'r gweithlu ac i'r sector gofal plant, oherwydd da ni'n methu hyd yma a perswadio dynion I ddod I weithio yn y blynyddoedd cynnar, a dwi'n meddwl mae rhan o'r ateb I herio syniadau ystrydebol ynglyn â pwy sydd yn gofalu, ydy'n bod ni'n cymell ac yn annog mwy o ddynion I ddod I weithio yn y blynyddoedd cynnar. Rwan, mae hynny yn ei hun yn ymwneud â herio syniadau negyddol ynglyn â pwy sydd yn gofalu, ond mae yna resymau systemig hefyd ynglyn â pam bod dynion ar y cyfan ddim yn dewis gyrfaoedd yn y blynyddoedd cynnar, a mae rhai o'r heriau rheini hefyd yn wynebu menywod. Felly mae cyfraddau tâl yn rhy isel o lawer yn y sector enghraifft. Mae yna her cynllunio gweithlu pan mae'n dod I berswadio unigolion I ennill cymhwyster ac o ddod I weithio fyny, a mae honno'n her sy'n cael ei deimlo ar draws y sector, ond yn enwedig yn y sector cyfrwng Cymraeg. Felly dwi'n falch iawn o weld yr adroddiad gafodd ei gynhyrchu gan eich pwyllgor chi, ac yn credu bod na lawer ynddo fo i'w gymeradwyo. Dwi'n siŵr y gawn ni gyfle yn y man I drafod hynny, ond I mi herio'r ystrydeb yna ynglyn â pwy sydd yn gofalu, ac yr chwilio wedyn beth ydy'r rhai o'r problemau systemig sydd yn bwydo yr ystrydebau hynny hefyd. Os da ni'n gallu cracio y pethau yna, yna mi fydd hi yn llawer haws fel i ni fel gymdeithas i fod yn rhannu y gofal am ein plant ni ac i wneud yn siŵr bod hynny'n digwydd mewn ffordd sydd yn llawer tecach nag y mae o ar y funud.
Very good. Jackie, would you like to go next?
Thank you. Well, I'm Jackie James and I work in the community in Cardiff. So I'm mainly in the Riverside area and I work for 2 different community centres and we work mainly with ethnic minority people. And when I looked at this report, I was really pleased actually, because there's a lot of things in there that I can see if it's done, you know, it'll be really great for the whole idea of childcare. I came into childcare quite late as an adult. Well, I call it late, it wasn't from a child. I had another career and then came into childcare. And I only came into childcare after I had my own children, when I found it so difficult myself to find someone to look after my children because I wanted to study and do something else. And so I was in the same boat as many parents find themselves in these days. And having to find care, I went to the person that most of us would go to would be our parents if they're around. So I was very lucky to have a mother who lived around the corner, who was able to look after my children while I managed to do some studying and enjoy then started working in childcare. When I look at childcare today, when you think of it, I mean, Quentin is right. When I think of the amount of qualifications and studying and things you have to do to actually be in this business, in this, you know, sector, and then you look at the pay rate to go with it, it just doesn't match at all. And that is one of the things I see that's come out in this report, which I'm glad to see. And also the idea that we need more people from a younger age in schools. Do they talk about childcare as a career? In the schools, you know, what do they know about it? Is there anyone going in there telling these young people, look, this is a brilliant career that you can actually do and enjoy for the rest of your life? That sort of thing needs to be addressed. It needs to be looked at. And also the fact as I'm from an ethnic minority background, where are all the other ethnic minority workers? And there are barriers there that's stopping them from doing childcare or play work or whatever. And it was really nice to read this report and see the different recommendations that have been laid out to go forward. And most of them I can say I'm really pleased with. If the Welsh Government gets on top of this, I would be a very happy person. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Jackie. Laura Maguire, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, my name's Laura. I'm a single parent of 3 girls and I'm a member of a group called Single Parents Wales, which is how I heard about the original focus group. I was really pleased to have a chance of expressing my voice because for 2 reasons mainly. My own personal hurdles and the barriers I faced trying to forge a career, trying to provide for my children as a single parent, and pay my mortgage, pay my bills, and be a role model. I want to go out to work. I want my children to see me forge a career for myself. But with parents, my parents are 2.5 hours away. I had to find alternative childcare. So I faced huge hurdles doing that. And on a weekly basis, I still face hurdles. As a mum of 3 daughters in particular, I want them to feel confident that they can, in the future, be a parent and have a career. And at the moment, all they see is the huge juggling act that I face on a weekly basis. And that doesn't fill them with confidence that they can have the 2. And I want them, whatever they've, my eldest is doing her GCSEs. I don't want her to feel, what is the point in doing this? Because at one point I'm going to have to make the choice. I think the report is amazing, and I love the idea of reaching out to new parents for childcare options, but I do think we need to go before that and hit kids when they're in education and say you can have both, especially women. I think that's really important, and I'm really, really pleased to see the progress that's been made.
Thank you very much indeed. Senedd Williams, would you like to introduce yourself?
Diolch Jenny. Senedd Williams yw'n enw I. Dwi'n aelod o'r Senedd ar gyfer Gorllewin De Cymru. Dwi'n aelod newydd o'r Senedd, ges I fethol mis Mai, a dwi hefyd yn aelod o'r pwyllgor oedd wedi llunio'r adroddad a clywed y dystiolaeth. A cyn bod fi'n sôn ychydig bach am hynny, fyddwn ni'n hoffi rhannu tipyn bach o'n hanes personol I. Achos nes I gorfod cymryd saibwng ngyrfa, oherwydd doedd dim gofal plant ar gael ar fy nghyfer I. Doedd fy rhieni ddim yn byw yn ddigon agos ac fy nhad yn sâl yn y pen draw hefyd, felly a rhieni fy ngŵr yn byw oriau I ffwrdd, felly doedd ddim yn opsiwn. Ac oedd y gost wedyn, oedd yr oriau o'n i'n gweithio, o'n i'n newyddiadurwr, o'n i ddim yn gweithio oriau rheolaidd, felly oedd yn amhosib I fi gweud y gwir I barhau gyda ngyrfa. Ac oedd y gost wedyn, pan nes I weithio am flynyddoedd lawer yn rhan amser, ac oedd y gost doedd ddim yn fforddiadwy, ac o'n I mewn swydd eitha da, oedd yn talu'n eitha da, ond doedd ddim yn fforddiadwy I fi nôl yn llawn amser a talu yn llawn amser ar gyfer gofal plant. Felly, dwi'n meddwl bod hyn, mae rhaid I ni, yn amlwg mae yn effeithio ar rai teuluoedd incwm isel, teuluoedd gyda anghenion arbennig o rannu plant, mathau gwahanol o deuluoedd mewn ffyrdd gwahanol. Mae rhaid ni gofio hynny, ond dwi yn meddwl bod e'n effeithio ar bron bob menyw sy'n gweithio. Felly mae fe'n rhywbeth sy'n rhaid I ni fynd i'r afel a fe o sawl cyfeiriad. Felly o'n i'n diddordeb mawr ac yn falch iawn o'r ffaith oeddwn ni fel pwyllgor yn edrych ar y pwnc yma. Oeddwn ni wythnos diwetha yn trafod adroddiad cyflwr y genedl gyda swyddogion y mudiad hawliau menywod a cydraddoldeb menywod chwarae teg. A mae fe'n adroddiad sy'n edrych bob blwyddyn ar pa mor gyfartal yw'r rhyweddau yng Nghymru, ac mae fe'n edrych ar y ffigerau diweddara sy'n mesur anghydraddoldeb o ran rhywedd. A fe ofynes i'r swyddogion, be fydde'r un peth fydde'n wneud y gwahaniaeth fwyaf o ran cau y bwlch cyflog rhywedd, o ran taclo yr anghydraddoldebau sy'n effeithio'n anghymesur ar fenywod, beth fydde'n gwella cyfleoedd menywod yn y gweithle pan maen nhw yn y gwaith ac yn y gymdeithas yn gyffredinol. A'r ateb oedd yn hollol syml, gofal plant am ddim I bawb, a bod hynny ar gael o oedran gynnar, o leia flwydd os nad yn gynt. Achos mae adroddiad ar ôl y droddiad wedi dangos I ni bydde hynny nid yn unig yn taclo anghydraddoldeb rhywedd, ond fydde hefyd yn helpu taclo tlodi, rhywbeth wrth gwrs mae ein pwyllgor ni yn edrych arno hefyd. Felly, dyna'r ddelfryd, dyna'r safon air, ond wrth gwrs mae fe'n rhywbeth mae rhaid I ni weithio tuag at ei wireddu. A beth nath ein cymell ni fel pwyllgor I edrych ar hwn oedd yr ystadegau welon ni, ac eto, sicr y profiadau o'n i'n clywed gan fy nghyfeillion benywaidd fi o ran sut nath y pandemig ddadlenni y bylchau o ran y gwendidau anferth yn y ddarpariaeth gofal blant bresennol. Nath y strwythur yna oedd yn helpu menywod I weithio, nath e just chwalu am gyfnod. A'r wedyn, wrth gwrs, y modd nath y baich gofal ar fenywod cael ei ddwysau hefyd gan y pandemig yn dod yn glir. Felly, roedd hyn yn amlwg I ni fel pwyllgor cydraddoldeb y Senedd edrych arno ac ymchwilio. Ac wrth gwrs, mae'n bwysig nodi wedyn yn eithaf ni fel pwyllgor benderfynu ar yr ymchwiliad yma cyn i'r cytundeb cydweithio rhwng fy mhlaid i Plaid Cymru a'r Llywodraeth Lafur gael ei gytuno. Ond wrth gwrs, roedd hynny wedyn wrth i'r ymchwiliad fynd rhagddo, nath ei roi arwydd y cad ychwanegol un hymchwiliad ni ac un argymellion ni. A dwi'n gobeithio y bydd yr adroddiad yn medru lliwio gweithrediad y polisi newydd yma sydd yn y cytundeb cydweithio o ran ymestyn gofal plant am ddim yn y cytundeb mae fe at 2 flwydd yn y lle cyntaf, ond wrth gwrs dwi'n gwybod bod llawer o fudiadau sy'n edrych ar hyn a fy mhlaid i eisiau i hynny fynd ymhellach.
Excellent. Thank you very much indeed, all of you, for the introductions. I want to thank the 4 people who've submitted questions in advance, but anybody who's on the call can, of course, submit questions to us so that we can address your issues, or if you want to ask something specific about something that one of the panelists has said and to clarify their response or to challenge it or whatever you want to say. But in the first instance, let's just look at those who've submitted questions in advance. There's a very nice one here which will be very familiar to both Jackie James and Laura Maguire, which is a question from Sophie. I work in my local council in a supervisory role, so obviously not one of the lowest paid members of staff, but will only bring up home about £1 an hour when I return to my role after maternity leave due to the cost of childcare. But I'm unable to earn enough to survive on statutory maternity pay. So what can the Welsh Government do to stop this way in which it is disadvantaging women and leaving them vulnerable? Laura, would you like to start? Because I'm sure that feels terribly familiar to you.
Yeah, no problem. It is absolutely rings very true. I went back to work when my youngest was 7 months old. Due to having 3 children, my childcare bill was £800 a month, and I earned just over £1,000 a month. So obviously that wasn't anywhere near enough. I was fortunate enough to receive some tax credits, but still was a huge struggle. I made the decision to muddle through and stick at it because I knew one day it would get easier, and my absolute determination to get up, go to work every day, and for my children to see me do that pushed me through it. It did mean that we weren't able to have the lifestyle that I would like to have for my children. We did struggle financially. I got myself into levels of debt, which I'm still catching up from now, and all because I wanted to work. I have a degree and I worked hard for it, and I have, like I said, 3 daughters that I want to be a role model for, and I am taking aside the fact that I'm a parent. I'm an educated woman who wants to forge a career for herself. I have something to offer in the workplace, and I enjoy my work. It improves my mental health on a daily basis, to leave the house, to have that routine, to work with others. I work with teenagers in a secondary school. I help them with their literacy, and I feel it's an important role, and I absolutely love it. But I've had to make huge sacrifices to get to this point. So I completely understand. All I would say to the person asking this question is hang on in there. You can do it. And to the Welsh Government, please offer more help, because it shouldn't be this hard.
Okay. Obviously, the Welsh Government doesn't control the the amount of money paid in statutory maternity pay, and we don't control the taxation system, the income tax system in this country. That's very much the job of the UK government. But I'll turn to you, Senedd. What do you think the Welsh Government can do in this current situation, given that the Welsh Government does not set the policy of how much people can retain of their pay from paying income tax?
Na, yn anffodus, ond dwi'n meddwl un o'r pethau nath ddod trwyddo yn glir iawn o'r dystiolaeth glywon ni, gan mamau fel Laura a grwpiau ffocws wnaethon ni cynnal, oedd bod y system ar hyn o bryd yn anwastad iawn, yn amrywiol iawn dros Gymru. Mae'r hyn dych chi'n talu ddim yn safonol dros Gymru ar gyfer bron unrhyw fath o ofal. Mae'n amlwg, mae llawer iawn o'r ddarpariaeth mewn ysgolion hyd yn oed. Y ddarpariaeth i chi'n gallu cael o ran gofal cyn ag ar ôl ysgol, dyw hynny ddim yn safonol. A ddim wastad yn fforddiadwy i bob teulu. Does na ddim ar hyn o bryd, mae yna rhai ysgolion yn gweithredu hyn, ond ddim pob ysgol, lle ydych chi'n gallu falle cael polisi o bod lle mae teuluoedd incwm isel yn talu'n llai am weithgareddau a clybiau ar ôl ysgol neu bod nhw am ddim. Felly byddwn ni'n hoffi gweld y Llywodraeth Cymru yn gweithredu system lle o ran y meysydd lle mae fe yn medru rheoli, a mae hynny'n yn benna yn ymwneud â'r gofal sydd yn dod o dan awdurdodau lleol, a drwy'r system addysg wrth gwrs, bod nhw'n gallu safoni ac wneud yn fforddiadwy yr hyn dyn ni'n talu ar gyfer y fath yna o ofal, ac wrth gwrs byddwn ni eisiau gweld falle rhyw fath o fframwaith lle mae pawb yn mynd i wybod faint maen nhw'n talu a dyw e ddim yn amrywio gymaint o un dref i dref arall, bod yna hyd yn oed bod y sector yn breifat, bod y safon yn gyson, bod y prisiau yn gyson, ac felly does dim ots lle ydych chi'n byw, ydych chi'n mynd i wybod faint mae gofal plant a pa fath o safon gofal plant mae pawb yn mynd i gael, achos beth dyn ni ddim eisiau chwaith yw bod safon uwch ar gael i rheini sy'n gallu fforddio fe. Mae rhaid i'r safon fod yr un peth i bob plentyn sy'n ots beth maen nhw'n talu neu bod nhw ddim yn talu. Felly dyna beth fyddwn ni'n hoffi gweld yr fframwaith rheoleiddiol yna gall Llywodraeth Cymru falle ceisio darparu. Oeddwn ni'n byw am gyfnod yn yr Unol Daleithiau, ac wrth gwrs ni'n gwybod yw'r Unol Daleithiau ddim yn unrhyw fath o batrwm ar gyfer lles, ar gyfer unrhyw fath o ofal cymdeithasol. Ond beth oedden nhw yn wneud mewn rhai siroedd goleuedig oedd darparu beth o'n nhw'n galw'n enrichment program, a dwi'n falch o weld bod peth o hyn yn treiddio nawr i Gymru, a lle oeddech chi'n cael gweithgareddau ar gyfer plant yn yr oriau cyn ysgol a'r oriau ar ôl ysgol, ac oedden nhw'n rhai oedd yn ffitio patrwm gwaith, felly oedden nhw ddim yn gorffen am 3 o'r gloch neu 4 o'r gloch, ond yn gorffen am 6 o'r gloch. Ac oedden nhw o safon uchel iawn, ond un tal wedi subsideiddio oeddech chi'n talu amdanyn nhw, ac oedd y rheini oedd yn dod o gartrefion cymysel ddim yn talu unrhyw beth o gwbl. Felly dwi'n meddwl bod y bethau mae'r Llywodraeth yn gallu wneud mwyn wneud yn siŵr bod gofal plant a mathau gwahanol o gofal plant yn gyson ac yn fforddiadwy.
Very good. Should we move on to, because we've got 2 more questions have come in, so that's all fantastic, and keep them flowing. We've got a question here from Kyle. What are the pitfalls in regard to childcare and parental employment in general? Gwenllian, obviously you have quite a wide remit in your role, and I wondered if you could think about and let us know what you think are the pitfalls, or we've listened to some of the advantages already. So
yeah. Wel, dwi'n meddwl mae un broblem eitha cyffredin ydy bod yna ddiffyg dealltwriaeth o pa mor gymleth ydy'r gyfundrefn gofal plant a pa mor llym ydy'r rheoliadau hefyd, a mae hynny am reswm cwbl ddealladwy oherwydd yr hyn mae unrhyw ddarparwr gofal plant yn ei wneud ydy edrych ar ôl yr unigolion yn bywydau ni sydd fwyaf pwysig i ni. Felly dydy o ddim yn system hawdd i fod yn gweithredu o ddi mewn iddi hi. A mae hynny wedyn yn cael ei adlewyrchu yn y marn ni gan ddiffyg parch tuag at y sector oherwydd byddwch chi'n aml yn clywed pobl yn deud rhywbeth fel fe jyst unrhyw un fod yn darparwr gofal plant, heb ddeall yr holl waith cymhwyso, fel oedd Jackie'n deud yn gynharach, mae rhywun yn gorfod i wneud, a'r math arbennig o bersonoliaeth mae o'n gymryd i edrych ar ôl llond ystafell o blant. Dio ddim yn rhywbeth y byddwn ni'n gallu wneud, mae gen i 4 o blant a 9 adre. Felly dwi'n meddwl bod yna ddiffyg parch at y sector, diffyg dealltwriaeth o pa mor heriol ydy hi. A mae yna hefyd fwlch gagendor oherwydd fel da ni wedi clywed, ar y naill law, da ni gyd yn cydnabod bod y gyfundrefn gofal plant yn un bryd, ond ar y llaw arall, dydy staff ddim yn cael eu talu'n ddigonol ac mae yna gydnabyddiaeth ariannol annigonol iddyn nhw. Felly, i le mae'r arian yna mynd? Wel, mae o'n mynd i gynnal gwaelodlu'n ansawdd mewn gwirionedd a'r holl ofynion sydd yna o ran y gymhareb staff sydd yn cael eu blisfona yn gwbl llym, fel o'n i'n deud yn gynharach ac am resymau cywir. Felly, heb ryw fath o chwyldro ariannol, dwi ddim yn siŵr iawn sut fydd rhai o'r problemau yma yn gallu cael eu datrys. Ac mae rhaid deud, ers gyhoeddi'r adroddiad, mae yna ambell i gyhoeddiad adeiladol iawn wedi cael ei gwneud, enghraifft, codi y gyfradd gyllido ar gyfer y cynnig gofal plant, symud at gysoni y gyfradd gyllido ar gyfer addysg gynnar, dechrau'n 10, cyllid cynnig gofal plant ac ati. Felly, da ni'n sicr yn symud i'r cyfeiriad iawn, ond dwi'n meddwl bod rhaid i ni ddod yn ôl at y cwestiwn gwaelodol yna, o sut da ni'n parchu pobl sydd yn rhoi i bywyd i edrych ar ôl plant bach, a bod ni'n rhoi mwy o fri ar y math yna o yrfa, ac y ffordd hawsau wneud hynny ydy drwy godi cyflogau. Felly, dwi'n gobeithio bod hynny yn ateb y cwestiwn i ryw raddau, ond dwi'n meddwl bod cynnal y math yma o drafodaeth hefyd yn help i godi ymwybyddiaeth am pa mor gymhleth ydy'r sector, a bod ni'n dechrau gweld hynny, bod ni'n dechrau gweld symudiad i'r cyfeiriad iawn, a mae rhaid cofio na dim ond ers 4 mlynedd ac ychydig, mae'r cynnig gofal plant ar gyfer plant 3 a 4 oed ar gael. Felly, chi'n gwybod, does y ryfedd bod ni wedi cracio rhai o'r heriau yma eto. Dwi'n gobeithio pan fyddwn ni'n edrych yn ôl yn 2027 ar ddegawd o fod yn cynnig gofal plant wedi gyllido gan y Llywodraeth, y byddwn ni'n gallu gweld bod rhai o'r heriau yma erbyn hynny wedi cael eu cracio. Mae'n mynd i gymryd amser am nifer o resymau go gymhleth.
Thank you. Jackie, there's a question here from Caris about the different ways of working that we've got used to during the lockdown. So how concerned should we be that the move back to work from offices could detract from the flexibility that has developed in a number of workplaces in terms of coming and going to collect children, etc., and that this could pose to be a step backwards in terms of the work-life balance. So I wonder if you have anything you can tell us about how people, the parents of the children that you've been looking after, how they've been managing during the lockdown, and whether you think that this flexibility might be at risk.
Right, during the lockdown, one of the community centres I work for, Women Connect First in Riverside, we did provide a lot of online activities for the children, and the parents were really grateful for it because obviously they were doing their schoolwork and they had to do their work as well, and it was a very difficult time for the parents. Now I know many of them are going back into work. Some are still able to do this flexibility of working from home and going in. But I could see the difficulty there with some of them because they have to get back into that routine of going to collect the children from school, finding childcare for them, because if we think it was 18 months of lockdown, I can't remember how long it was now, but it was quite a long time where there was nothing. Everything was shut down. So there was nowhere for them to take their children. So they have to get the children back into a routine of going into some sort of care. The flexibility, some employers, I can see they're okay. They're going back to the flexibility of allowing them to be able to finish early as they did before. But I do feel that there are some employers who actually like the idea of their employers working from home, because it saved them a lot on money if they were office workers. It saved them a lot on that. So that the parents are then at home, and it's difficult when you're at home with children. It's harder. I think it's much harder than if you're in the office. So it could be a step backward for some people. Most of the people that I work with, though, I must admit, they have the problem similar to the question before, where they're on low pay and they're doing zero-hour contracts, odd working hours, shift work and all that. And for them to be able to get any help with their childcare is almost non-existent, because they just don't even come into that category. And it's very, very difficult. And I would hope actually that after the lockdown, many adults, when they had to look after their children, I did have many adults coming back and saying, oh my goodness, I don't know how you do it, Jackie, because they had their children home every day. And they were like, oh, how do you manage with all these kids? I can't cope with mine. Do you know what I mean? And I was hoping that they've got a little bit more insight, as Gwenllian say, and a little bit more respect for what we do every single day. And it's even, you know, when they have children with disabilities, because a lot of the children who were at home and, you know, they couldn't go in and they had autism and the parents have got to look after them every day. Very, 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 very difficult. And I feel that we've got a little bit more, Gwenllian, I hope, a little bit more respect has come there now from parents and from employers, because they realise the difficulty. These employers who stay at home with their children are realising the difficulty that parents have with educating their children at home. And I'm really hoping we don't go backwards, but that we continue forwards, because caring for our children is so, so important for their overall development, really, really important. And we need to get that in everyone's head going forward.
Thank you. Gwenllian, could you just pick up on the point that Jackie has made about people who work 0-hour contracts, flexible working, for whom the current childcare offer simply doesn't cut it, you know, that doesn't enable them to pick up any of the benefits of the childcare offer at the moment. And I wonder if you could just tell us how you think that might change without undermining children's rights not to be sort of taken from pillar to post the whole time.
Ia, mae hynna'n mynd yn ôl â ni at y pwynt yna, dydy, bod darpariaeth gofal plant yn ymwneud â sawl peth, yr economi sylfaen ar y naill law, ac ar y llaw arall, ffyniant a datblygiad y plentyn, a da ni'n gwybod o dystiolaeth gan elusen fel achub y plant a gan waith ymchwil Colegau Cymru, pa mor bwysig ydy darpariaeth gofal plant o ansawdd ar gyfer ffyniant a datblygiad plentyn. O ran y cynnig gofal plant ei hun, dwi'n credu mod i'n iawn i ddeud erbyn heddiw bod unigolyn sydd yn gweithio ar gytundebau awr 0 yn gallu dangos tystiolaeth i Llywodraeth Cymru o hynny, ac mi ddylen nhw fod yn gymwys ar gyfer y cynnig gofal plant. Ac wrth gwrs, dim ond wythnos yma, mae yna gyhoeddiad wedi bod fod y cynnig gofal plant yn cael ei ehangu yn sgil y cytundeb cydweithio i gynnwys unigolion sydd mewn hyfforddiant er enghraifft, a mae hynny'n dod i rym o fis Medi ymlaen. Felly, da ni'n gweld camau ychydig wrth ychydig i drio llenwi y bylcha yna sydd eisoes yn bodoli. O safbwynt hyblygrwydd, dwi'n meddwl un anodd iawn mynd yn ôl at bwynt oedd Senedd yn wneud, ydy sut ydych chi'n darparu ar gyfer teuluoedd a mam yn enwedig sydd yn gweithio oriau lle fysa'n cael ei ystyried yn anarferol. Ac i raddau, mae'r pwynt am hyblygrwydd yn bwydo hynny hefyd yn dydy oherwydd os nad oes gennych chi oriau craidd, fel fi enghraifft, os gen i ddim oriau craidd, dwi'n cael gwneud fo oriau gwaith pryd bynnag dwi'n dymuno, ydy hynny yn helpu mi, ydy o'n gwneud pethau'n anoddach o ran trio cael gofal plant am 7 o gloch y nos pan dwi'n cymryd rhan mewn trafodaeth banel enghraifft gyda Llywodraeth Cymru. Ond dwi'n meddwl yn ei hanfod mi ddyla y symudiad yna at hyblygrwydd gan gyflogwyr i gwneud hi'n haws. A mi ddyla ni fel cyflogwyr a fel sawl sydd yn gweithio atgoffa ni'n hunain fod gynnon ni gyd hawl sylfaenol i ofyn i'n cyflogwyr ni i alluogi ni i weithio'n hyblyg. A fel cyflogwr fy hun, dwi'n gweld hi'n anodd deall pam na fydde rhywun yn caniatáu hynny mwyn helpu unigolion i allu cael balans yna rhwng bywyd y cartre a gwaith ychydig yn well. A falle hefyd bod ni'n trafod digon ar ôl dynion yn hyn i gyd, a lle mae'r tadau, ble mae'r rôl nhw o ran bod yn cynorthwyo darpariaeth gofal yn y cartre ac yn wir, darpariaeth gofal mewn cylchoedd meithrin fydd playgroups ac ati.
Thank you. Laura, is there anything you want to add on this issue of the inflexibility of the current arrangements?
I'm fortunate enough to work school hours, which is wonderful. So I have breakfast with my children every day and tea with them, obviously, then every evening. However, I have a term time only contract. But my childcare contract means that even though I have 13 weeks off unpaid each year, I still have to pay 52 weeks of the year childcare because I was unable and still am unable to be able to get any other kind of contract that allows the permanence that I need, because I don't want to be changing one academic year to the other childcare providers because my children are everything, and I'm very confident with my current childcare provider, so I've just had to suck it up and pay it for the last few years. I also think that although obviously early years is incredibly important to ensure that the childcare provision, but I don't think much thought is gone into the fact that even once they're in secondary school, they are still very, very much children. So, for example, if my 11-year-old needs provision, and I have to work, there is no real childcare options for her. She still needs to be with an adult, a qualified adult, and yet where do I put her that's safe, that's appropriate for her age? She still can't, I can't just leave her in the house because she's just 11, even though she's suddenly in secondary school. She still needs that support. If I have meetings, I don't finish work until an hour after her school finishes, so I still have to arrange provision, and I'm finding that incredibly difficult.
Thank you for that. That's really useful. I'm going to now pose a slightly harder question, which is for Senedd and myself, which is how well is your political party doing in equality of outcome for women? And that's a question from somebody called Rhiannon. Thank you, Rhiannon, for that question. Senedd, would you like to start off?
Wel, ddim digon da yw'r ateb onest. Dwi'n falch iawn eto o weld bod o fewn y cytundeb cydweithio, bod ni'n edrych ar weithio tuag at cwotau rhywedd ar gyfer sut ni'n cael ein cynrychioli yn y Senedd yn y dyfodol. Achos os nag ni'n gallu cael ein iawn yn y Senedd, lle i ni gobeithio yn gosod y polisïau a'r diwylliant ar gyfer ein cenedl, wedyn dwi ddim yn edrych yn obeithiol iawn, ydw e. Ond yn ddim yn digon da, achos dwi'n 100%. A byddwn ni ddim wedi gallu wneud y rôl yma, neu ddweud hwn yn gwbl onest, a dwi ddim eisiau bod fi yn rhoi pobl off, ond wrth gwrs mae sefyllfa pob menyw yn wahanol, a pob teulu yn wahanol. Byddwn ni ddim wedi gallu wneud y rôl yma pan oedd fy mhlant yn llai. A dyna'r gwir plaen. a dyle fe ddim fod felly. A falle byddwn ni ddim chwaith wedi cael fy nethol fel ymgeisydd ar gyfer fy mhlaid pan o'n i'n iau. Achos wrth gwrs, ni gyd yn gwybod mae nifer o fenywod yn cael bylchau yn ei gyrfa, oherwydd gofal plant ac oherwydd y problemau ni wedi bod yn trafod heno, a'r rhwystrau ni wedi bod yn trafod heno. Ac felly mae hynny mae yn effeithio ar eich hyder chi. Nid pawb, ond nath sicr effeithio ar fy hyder i, a na i ddweud hynny'n gwbl onest, o ran rhoi fy hunan ymlaen fel ymgeisydd. A dwi'n meddwl bod rhaid i bleidiau gwleidyddol gan gynnwys fy mhlaid i, rhoi mwy o gefnogaeth, a mwy o anogaeth, a mwy o gyfleon i fenywod, i fedru cyfrannu at y gweithgareddau pleidiol, ond hefyd o ran rhoi cefnogaeth iddyn nhw, cefnogaeth ymarferol iddyn nhw. Dwi'n cofio eisiau mynd i gynhadledd fy mhlaid enghraifft y doedd dim gofal plant. Felly, chymod, mor syml â hynny, mor arwynebol â hynny, a does dim cresh yn y Senedd. Felly, chi'n gwybod, a dwi'n byw awr a hanner i ffwrdd, bron awr a hanner i ffwrdd. Felly, bydden amhosib i fi fod yn y cyfarfod llawn a pleidleisio a cyrraedd nôl cyn 8 o'r gloch ar dydd Mawrth a dydd Mercher. Felly, chi'n gwybod, mae yna heriau mawr sylfaenol yn y byd gwleidyddol sydd angen I datrys.
I'm going to come in here. I was involved in the early feminist movement of the late 60s, early 70s, where one of the main demands of the women's movement was free childcare. Well, we haven't managed to achieve that, but what we have managed to achieve is much more understanding and awareness amongst political parties that women aren't going to go away and they aren't going to tolerate the position that we used to be in. My own mother, when she got married, she was told, well, that you've got to train this person who's going to replace you. You know, it was that brutal that most people could not stay in the jobs they were in after they were married. It was just considered not correct. So that doesn't happen any longer. But we had a real fight. Our ancestors had a huge fight, A, to get the vote, and B, to get child benefit. Originally, they were called family allowances. And that is society's contribution to children and to the role that mothers play, particularly when they've, in the early stages of their child's development. Well, child benefit has been allowed to wither on the vine. It hasn't been properly uprated since 2010. And in a previous Labour government, there was a massive increase in child benefit under Gordon Brown's direction as Chancellor of the Exchequer, but only after we had an absolutely massive row in 1997, which I was personally involved in, where there was a proposal to cut lone parent benefits. Laura Maguire, I'm sure you understand that obviously being a single parent is much more expensive than being having two wage earners in the household. I think the short answer to this is that we're not going to get anything unless we fight for it. Just as the Ford women upholsterers in 1968 who went on strike because they didn't get equal pay. Well, it is now illegal to not pay equal pay, but we still have a huge problem with women mainly being in the jobs that are least well paid and men predominantly in the best paid jobs. So there's an awful lot more to do, and we need to keep going. So I think there's some questions that have been put into the question and answer session. So one of them is from Sarah Rees. Work is the main route out of poverty. How can women return to work if they can only access childcare once they get a job? The upfront payments are a huge barrier, as well as long waiting lists. What can be done to support those looking for work with childcare? who would like to start first on this? Laura, do you want to start, and then I'll go to Jackie, and I'll go around on this one.
I know from being part of the Single Parents Wales group that this is a huge hurdle for many women. You know, they've gone and put themselves forward for a job, and that takes confidence after many knockbacks, perhaps in a personal level. And you know, if they're successful, then they manage to secure childcare, which again isn't always easy depending on the area that you live in. And then, as I was, we're expected to pay a month in advance before we've even got our first paycheck. Now, after being on maternity leave and scraping through that, you just don't have, in what my case was, £800 spare before you even get back into work. I was fortunate enough to be able to get hold of that money, but not everyone is. And then you're faced with a choice between, well, you're in a rock and a hard place. You want to improve life for yourself and your children, and yet you're forced to perhaps give up the job, claim benefits, and take a career break until perhaps your children are in school. And that shouldn't really be the case, because your confidence is knocked. You can experience mental health problems. There's loads of different issues with housing and so on that you can get yourself into. Having a mortgage myself, there's only certain benefits that are applicable if you have a mortgage. So if there was some kind of scheme available in whereby you could have a grant for that first month, then that would be a huge benefit, and it give the confidence for people to actually apply for the jobs in the first place.
Okay, so on the recently, the Welsh Government announced, Julie Morgan, the Deputy Minister for Social Services, announced that for those people who have 3 and 4 year olds who at the moment is a benefit confined to people who are in work, from September the offer is going to be expanded to parents who are in education and training as well. And that was in the Welsh Labour manifesto in the run up to the elections last May. So how big a difference do you think that'll make to enable women to go back to work quicker, or parents to go back to work quicker? Jackie, first of all, and then I'll come to Gwen Clean.
I'm really pleased to hear it's going to be extended, because when I had my children, luckily, unlike most people, I had my parents who live around the corner. And there are many people who haven't got anyone around who could look after their children. So I was able to do that for a time. But then I decided to actually go into childcare myself. That was the route that I decided to take. Okay, there's no one out there properly to look after my children. I'll do it myself. So I decided to go into childcare and get trained in that. And I started off as a childminder. It is very difficult for parents at the moment, and for this lady here, it's really, really hard, because the cost of childcare as well is quite expensive for a lot of people who just can't afford it. So she's asking about returning to work. Very, very difficult. Most people do take a gap, but there are times when you can't afford to take a gap. You have to do that, and then you end up relying on family, on friends, on everyone else. So I'm really glad to hear that, for a start, because this seems the start. Julie Morgan said it's going to be extended for education and training, because sometimes that's what they need. I needed that little bit of education. So luckily, as I say, I had my parents around the corner. If I didn't have them, I wouldn't have been able to do the education to even get me into where I am. So that is a start, I think, at the moment, a start for us to, from September, you say that is? That would be great. That would be
yes,
the start. Yeah, that will make a big difference to a lot of people. There are still some people, obviously, who, like this lady in the question, who we won't be able to help, but that will make a big difference, because many people, I changed my career, actually. I was in catering to begin with. Then after I had my 2 children, I changed career because it suddenly dawned on me, I'm working all these hours. Who's going to look after my children? What am I going to do? And I ended up changing to a childcare career. I know it seems ridiculous, a childcare career to look after my children, but it's been great. I absolutely love it. And this is a great help. This is a start. This is a start that they'll be able to have while in education and training. That is a big start to start off with. Let's hope it progresses even better.
Okay, so the same questioner from Sarah Rees, a second question is, when are we going to get the update on the commitment for childcare for 2-year-olds? And how do we address the issue that women are forced out of work unless they can get childcare support at the point when parental pay ends? So Gwen, I just want to turn to you, because this is also about the capacity of the childcare system to expand, at a rate where we're not putting quality at risk. So, we've got 2 elements of expansion. One that's already been announced starting in September, and obviously other people want to know, when's the offer for 2-year-olds going to start happening?
Wel, yn gyntaf, da ni'n croesawu y symudiad yna'n fawr iawn, a yn wir yn manifesto mudiad meithrin cyn etholiadau diwetha'r Senedd, oedden ni yn gobeithio gweld system fydda'n cyflwyno gofal plant i babanod dweud. Ond mae rhaid i ni gydnabod bod yna broblem ychwanegol yn bodoli, sef bod cyfran a chanran sylweddol o rieni sydd yn gymwys heddiw ar gyfer darpaniaeth cynnig gofal plant i blant 2 a 4 mlwydd oed ddim yn manteisio ar y cynnig. Am bo hynny, a felly dyna pam dwi mor falch o weld mae argymhelliad cyntaf adroddiad y Pwyllgor ydi codi ymwybyddiaeth o fodolaeth y cynnig gofal plant gyda rieni sydd yn gymwys, achos mae'n amlwg bod yna rhywbeth yn mynd o'i le yn y ffaith bod y ganran ddim mor uchel ar hyn y bysa ni yn ei ddigwydd. Rwan mae'n bosib ddisgwyl mae'n ddrwg yn ei, rwan mae'n bosib mae rhan o'r rheswm dros hynny ydi capacity, sef un o'r pwyntiau oedd Sarah wedi codi yn ei chwestiwn hi, a rhan o'n rôl ni yn mudiad meithrin a phartneriaid eraill cwlwm ydi creu capacity. Ond mae o'n mynd mor mae'n mynd â ni nôl at y cwestiwn yna ynglyn â her recrwtio gweithlu, a'r angen i ni weld mwy o bobl yn cymhwyso, yn enwedig o ran creu darpariaeth cyfrwng Cymraeg. Rhyw bythefnos yn ôl nath mudiad meithrin gyhoeddi dogfen bolisi o'r enw Brym i'n gweithlu, sydd yn adnabod rhai o'r argymhellion fel da ni'n gweld nhw ar gyfer cynyddu nifer yr unigolion o fewn y gweithlu fydda yn gallu arwain at greu mwy o capacity. Ac un o'r prosiectau diddorol da ni'n cydweithio arno fo efo Clwbiau Plant Cymru, Kids Clubs, ydy creu mwy o ddarpariaeth cyn ac ar ôl ysgol, sydd yn ymateb i yr hyn oedd Laura'n cyfeirio ato fo yn flaenorol. A dwi'n gwybod bod y sector all ysgol wir wedi cael her enfawr yn ystod y pandemig ac yn y cyfnod yn arwain allan o'r pandemig, oherwydd anfodlonrwydd enghraifft nifer o ysgolion i ganiatáu darpariaeth gofal plant i ddigwydd ar ei safleoedd yn gam neu yn gymwys. Felly does dim o hyn yn hawdd, a heb sector, heb staff yn y sector sydd yn gymwys a sydd yn teimlo bod yna barch iddyn nhw a bod yna dal gwerthu halen ar gyfer yr hyn maen nhw yn ei wneud. Dwi ddim yn gweld ffordd hawdd i ateb rhai o'r problemau yma, a dyna pam bod yr adroddiad mor bwysig, oherwydd bod yna ddealltwriaeth yma ynglyn â prinder staffio yn argymhelliad rhif 12, yr angen i godi cyflogau yn argymhelliad rhif 14. A'r pwynt mwyaf sylfaenol yna ydy pam fod rhieni cymwys ddim yn manteisio ar y ddarpariaeth sydd ar gael iddyn nhw rwan?
Good question. Another question has come up from an anonymous contributor, which is about the split in the childcare offer. They, on the one hand, this person, their child has early years provision in school from 9 in the morning till 11:20, and then it's topped up with private nursery, which requires her to collect from one setting to get the child to the other. Laura, as you work in a school, are you familiar with this process, and does that happen where you work?
I work in a secondary school, so that's a different environment. However, with my own children, I would have loved to have kept the children in one setting during the school day, but the school in my area, they don't allow that as an option. So I had to have a private childminder before and after school, which worked out a lot more costly than if the school had adequate provision. I don't work very long hours, and yet I'm still having to pay several hours a day childcare because of the way the school day works. So yes, I'm very aware of my children having to go to 2 different settings throughout the school day. And because of the difference between infants and junior schools in my area as well, you've got to take into consideration things like inset days. So they don't communicate with each other. So we've got different inset days. So I have to pay then a full day's provision. And at one point I had 3 children in 3 different schools, and each having different inset days. No capacity to be able to take care of them myself because I worked in a different school. So I was having to pay throughout a period of a month, 3 days full worth of childcare. So I was majorly in negative during those days before I'd even started to go to work. So yeah, there's a lot to consider with different settings. And when you're on your own, which I literally am, and many people in the single parents Wales group that I'm part of in the same position, we don't have family to depend on. We don't have a partner that is able to do those days. Childcare is the only option.
Thank you for that. We're coming towards the end, so I'm going to come to each of you, slightly different questions, but if you can think about the one thing you think that needs to change. Anyway, this is a question for Senedd, I think, because it's quite a political one. 31% of children in Wales living in poverty. The current offer discriminates against children who are barred from the childcare scheme because of their parents' employment status. So do you want to start off with that?
Ie, ac fe glywon ni dystiolaeth fel pwyllgor ynglyn â yr hyn ni newydd fod yn trafod mewn gwirionedd yn dife, sut mae yr rhwystyr yna i fynd nôl i'r gwaith, bod chi ddim yn gymwys os ych chi'n ddi-waith, bod hynny'n gallu bod yn rhwystyr i chi wedyn fynd nôl at y gwaith. A fel nath Gwenllian dwi'n meddwl sôn yn gynharach, dyn ni ddim yn sôn fan hyn just am gyfle y fam neu rhiant. Wrth gwrs, y ffordd allan o dlodi gobeithio yw gwaith, ond hefyd, dyn ni'n gwybod bod plant o deuluoedd yn cwmiselaru hennill hefyd o ran i datblygiad nhw pan fo nhw'n gallu cael gofal plant o ansawdd uchel. Felly, a mae hynny yn ei dro yn mynd i helpu nhw i gyrraedd eu potensial a gwireddu eu potensial a gobeithio eu harwain nhw mas o'i hamgylchiadau nhw. Felly, mae'r holl bethau hyn ynghlwm yn bersonol, byddwn ni yn hoffi gweld, ni wedi sôn yn dyn am y camau wrth gam sy'n digwydd ar hyn o bryd gyda'r cynnig, a dwi'n gobeithio fe glywon ni dystiolaeth o'r Sweden er enghraifft, lle mae fe'n hollol naturiol i gael gofal plant hyblyg iawn, fforddiadwy iawn ar gael i bawb. Felly gobeithio rhyw ddiwrnod byddwn ni'n gallu cyrraedd i fyna. Ond ie, gam wrth gam yw hi ar hyn o bryd, a dwi'n cydnabod yn llawn, a fi'n credu bod Women's Equality Network wedi trafod hyn yn eu tystiolaeth nhw hefyd, yn ogystal â chwarae teg, bod ni'n gweld sut mae peidio medru cynnig gofal plant am ddim ymestyn y cynnig yna i bobl sydd ddim mewn gwaith, sut mae hynny yn anfantais mewn gymaint o ffyrdd.
Very good. So there was a final question from Kamar. Why are women so amazing, and what benefits would a better system of childcare have on society and the economy? So, Jackie, would you like to go next? What do you think? We can agree women are amazing, but what is the one thing that you want to see done so that we have a better system and a better society?
Well, yes, I agree. We are absolutely amazing. And the amount of things that we juggle about. Better system for childcare. Actually, the economy would grow much better if we had better childcare. Look how many amazing women are at home and they can't work because of the hours of work and because of the childcare. I have people in work, they can work during term time, but come holiday time, and you know how many school holidays there are through the year, then they have to pay out, amount for childminders, etc., which costs a lot. And if they can't do that, then they're not working. I myself took time off work. Luckily, during that time, I was able to study to go into the childcare industry, actually, from one to another. But if we had more parents, more, how can I put it, more decent childcare, in the fact that we have children. I look after children in creche, so they come to us from like 6 months and onwards. And in my work, we're helping parents to get back into work. It would have an enormous effect on our economy, because if you look at all the parents, single parents, whether they're single or not, who are studying and want to get into work, they have so much to give. So much to give, but haven't got the childcare in order to give it.
Yeah, thank you. That's a really important point. Thank you for making that. Gwenclean, would you like to go next? What is the one thing you want to see changed?
Okay, so I fod chydig bach yn chwaraeus. Ella bod ni ddim eisiau bod yn amazing a gorfod cario'r holl faich emosiynol o orfod dryglo popeth, a dyna pam bod ni angen system gofal plant sydd yn gweithio o'n plaid ni fel menywod hefyd. Felly dwi'n bersonol yn falch iawn o weld y cynnydd yn y gyfres ar gyfer darpariaeth cynnig gofal plant sydd newydd gael I gyhoeddi, ond petai gen I hydlaeth, a does gen I ddim, mi fydden ni'n cynyddu y cyllid yna eto ac yn rhoi cyflogau cymharus I staff gofal plant gyda'r hyn sydd yn cael ei weld fel cyflog cwbl dderbyniol a normal I athrawon enghraifft.
Thank you very much. Laura, what would you like to see to make a much better system and which would improve society and the economy?
Yeah, so I'd like to see more confidence in women to be able to apply for jobs without, knowing that they're supported to have childcare provision that's adequate, but also confidence in our young women who are going through education currently, who to know that all their hard work in school, in extracurricular activities, isn't going to be in vain, that they're not going to face the same barriers that my children see that I have to face on a daily basis with my juggling act, to know that it is worthwhile, that their careers can be achieved, that they can be both mothers and successful in whatever their field is in the future. I don't see why they can't have both.
Thank you very much indeed. And I think that's an excellent conclusion. We clearly want an affordable childcare system that's universal, like we have in Sweden. We clearly need to, we know that that will then strengthen the economy and enable more women to stay in the workplace. We clearly need to fight for making the funding of childcare a higher priority in society. And as Laura says, we need more confident women who are going to be able to make an even greater contribution to society. So happy International Women's Day tomorrow to everybody, and we need to keep up the fight.